It might not get the press of Thailand or Vietnam, but right in the middle of Southeast Asia, there's a country that could be the ultimate food trip. This is Malaysia, the home to not just one native cuisine, but dozens, all layered on top of each other, fighting for space in food courts, hawker centers, and some of the world's tallest buildings. Kuala Lumpur, the national capital, is home to 1,000 different enclaves, showcasing the delicacies of the ethnic Malays, the Chinese Malays, the Malay-Indians, and even the rural tribes of Borneo. They all have their own stories, but figuring out how it fits together, well, that's not just our mission. It's a challenge that's been defining life in Malaysia since the first days of independence. But why shy away from a challenge when it means unraveling one or several of the world's most fascinating cuisines, trying some absolutely mind-blowing dishes, and spending a full day eating our way across Malaysia's biggest city? This is our attempt at the story of Malaysian food, today on OTR. Welcome to Kuala Lumpur, the Garden City of Lights according to the Ministry of Tourism. KL to everyone who actually lives here, all 9 million people crowded into the urban sprawl stretching across the Klang Valley. To start with the basics, KL is here, just inland from the Strait of Malacca on the western edge of the Malay Peninsula, roughly equidistant from the Thailand border and the country of Singapore. Once a part of Malaysia, but carved out in 1965 after 3 years of riots, tension between Malay Muslims and ethnic Chinese. The truth is, ever since the end of colonization, Malaysia has been a complicated place. Vastly diverse and multiracial, but unlike other parts of Southeast Asia, it's not a melting pot, since it never really melted, each group occupying their own version of the country. Now, I know that might sound harsh, starting the video with that kind of statement. But I do not mean that as a negative. In fact, it's why this is such an epic place to come for food. When we talk about Malaysian cuisine, we're really talking about all the people who call this place home. The Malays, Chinese Malays, Malay-Indians, Peranakan and Thai Malays, and the countless tribes of Borneo, spread out across the other half of the country across the water. And each of these groups has its own version of, quote, Malaysian food. There are dozens of complete culinary stories to tell, countless unique and incredible dishes, and just an incomparable range of delicacies with roots maybe somewhere else, but here developing in ways that are just absolutely mind-blowing. Now, that by itself would be worth a food trip. But what makes it even better is that in Malaysia, to all of these different groups, big flavors are an obsession. Every conversation revolves around finding the next meal, and every vendor, cook, or family wants nothing more than to show off their stuff. It's a constant source of frustration for Malaysians of all stripes that their food is overlooked, lost in a region packed with famous stuff. A layover at KL International Airport on the way to Bangkok, Singapore, or Hanoi. Hell, honestly, the entire country gets no respect. While Thailand shows up in prestige television, all Malaysia gets is a punchline in a ridiculous comedy. But we are not laughing, at least not today, because food in this country is serious business. So let's dive in and start our morning with the national breakfast. All right, so when we're talking about Malaysian food, you kind of have to break it down into a lot of different subcultures. There's Chinese Malaysian, and within that category, you have a lot of different Chinese Malaysian sort of cuisines and cultures. There's Indian Malaysian. There's now quite a bit of Arabic influence. You have traditional Malay cuisine. You have Thai Malay in the north here, and I wouldn't call it segregated because that has a negative connotation. But there hasn't really been that movement like there was in Thailand 100 years ago, for example, to sort of forcibly assimilate everybody. So these pockets still exist independently, but the one thing everyone has in common is Nasi Lemak, the quintessential breakfast food of Malaysia. There is an Indian version, a Chinese version, a Malay version, but it's all Nasi Lemak, coconut rice. I have one with fried chicken, one with curry chicken, peanuts, fried crispy fish, sambal, of course, the ubiquitous Malaysian chili sauce, cucumbers, and a boiled egg. That is how you start a day in Malaysia. There's a legend about Nasi Lemak that a very long time ago in a village near Malacca, way back in the days of the Great Sultanate, there was a widow who lived with her daughter, Sari. Since her husband had been killed in battle, the widow had to spend her time working, so it was on Sari to cook the meals. But Sari was clumsy, and one day she knocked over a pot of coconut milk into boiling rice. Her mother came home and smelled something captivating and asked what it was that was cooking on the pot. To which Sari replied, Nasi Lemak, basically Malay slang for "it's rice, Mom." Now, whatever the actual origin, Nasi Lemak is indisputably the only dish to win over all the different ethnic groups. At its core, a vibrant mix of coconut rice and sambal, chilies, tamarind, palm sugar, and shrimp paste, the essential sauce of this country. You can find Nasi Lemak on 1,000 menus, sold at restaurants as an entree, or on the road wrapped in a banana leaf, an everyday essential for all in Malaysia.
If you were to ask a Malaysian, a Nasi Lemak, you can actually have it at least 3 times a week. Yeah, so Nasi Lemak is actually a national dish also. One of the national dishes. It's very important for, you can have it, during breakfast, lunch, or even nighttime supper, even supper. So yeah. But to have a good Nasi Lemak is not easy preparing one. Yeah, because of the method itself and stuff like that. And of course, in the market, there are many premixes, RTC, RTE food everywhere in order to, put it this way, to expedite the workflow. But however, for us, Mr. Nasi Lemak, we are trying to preserve the traditional methods or the traditional ways of cooking it. So every single time, okay, for example, like our nasi kukus, the rice itself, we actually steam it. And every single batch, at least 1.5 hours to 2 hours. Every single batch.
I think that one thing that people should keep in mind when they come to Kuala Lumpur is don't be afraid to come into hawker centers. Some of the best food you're not necessarily going to find online. Just if you see a line, you get in that line. If you see a hawker center, there's some. It's not just your stall here. There's some great food all around us. And wherever you are, I think that's a really fun way to explore KL. Yeah. All right. Thank you very much, Chef. I appreciate it. I can't wait to eat. All right, I feel like we've been awake for a while, and not having eaten anything yet in Kuala Lumpur is crazy. Usually by now I'm 2 meals deep. Nasi Lemak, and again, there is no right answer. This is a place that when I tried it for the first time yesterday, kind of hits all the marks of what I like. But people have their own preferences. Everybody has their own, level of spiciness that they prefer. The rice, so lemak means fatty. So basically like the oiliness of the rice, some people like it really rich and coconutty. This is a little bit more fragrant and on the drier side, but still with that coconut taste. Let's eat. All the frustrations of this city. Kuala Lumpur is not easy. It's not the most inviting place, on the surface at least. It's hard to get around. It's not super walkable. It's not a really beautiful city, except for a couple of sections. There's a lot of, there's a lot of downsides to Kuala Lumpur, which we'll talk about in the video. But it just kind of all melts away when you have that first bite of food. And this is really, maybe the best breakfast in all of Southeast Asia. I mean, I don't know what you put ahead of this. I think it's a fair theory that the reason Malaysian food is so flavorful and the reason there's so much tension are one and the same. This is a land of incredible natural resources, from the tea and coffee grown in the Cameron Highlands to the rare fruits and vegetables found in the jungles of Borneo. There are herbs and spices, fresh seafood, and all kinds of other stuff that's been coveted by the outside world for thousands of years. And that's not an exaggeration. The ancient Romans called this landmass Chersonnesus aurea, the peninsula of gold. The Austronesians, who built towns and cities, traded in lumber, precious metals, and the spices of the nearby archipelago, dominating trade along the Silk Road. And that caught the attention of Chinese investors who, starting in the 14th century, arrived in droves, expanding port towns and building tin mines that would supply the planet. The trading hub of Malacca would draw merchants from Indonesia, Persia, and the Arab world, and then would come the Europeans. Malacca seized by the Portuguese, then the Dutch, and finally the English, who would draw the borders of what we now call Malaysia, ruling until the 1950s. With the whole world moving into the modern era, the British saw the colony as a way to control the auto industry, planting vast crops of rubber trees and importing millions of Tamil Indians to work that land. And even now, Malaysia is still the belle of the financial ball, the most popular kid in town, becoming a modern powerhouse thanks to the discovery of oil, vast reserves turning Petronas into one of the world's largest conglomerates. The Petronas Towers, once the tallest building or buildings on Earth, a symbol of the prosperity of the new capital, drawing migrants from all across the country to this city in search of jobs. With so many people from so many backgrounds all making up the fabric of Malaysia, well, now that we've had our obligatory plate of Nasi Lemak, it's time to throw ourselves in. And since it's still breakfast time, well, there's no better place to be than the heart of Chinatown. For Malaysia's Chinese, a quarter of the national population and 40% in Kuala Lumpur, mornings mean a place like this, what in this country is known as a coffee shop, or Kopitiam. If Nasi Lemak is the national meal, Kopitiams are probably Malaysia's biggest culinary export, long ago catching on across much of Asia and in recent years becoming something of a trend in big foreign cities. The most traditional places serve coffee and toast, and that's about it. A relic of the Hainanese who once worked in colonial households. But by now, it's not hard to find versions that have expanded into entire breakfast food courts, showcasing 1,000 kinds of soups and noodles that aren't Chinese. They're Chinese Malay.
All right, I have made my first mistake of the day. When you have so many locations planned to try and tell a comprehensive story, you at some point need to limit yourself to what you can physically manage. So my idea was to come here to Laifung, 70-year-old Kopitiam or coffee shop, get a coffee. Dennis got a tea, and a bowl of noodles. And either the Lala noodles are the most famous dish from this coffee shop. It's clam noodles in Chinese cooking wine. Their beef noodles, which is what we have for Dennis, is iconic as well, and that's been here since this shop opened in 1956. But then a gentleman who calls himself Laksa chef or Laksa master came over to the table. He said, "Please try my laksa, it's really good. I am a man of great weakness." Now we have double the food that we intended to have at this stop. But hey, that's the story of KL. It's actually really funny. A couple of days ago when I got to the city, I was hanging out with a couple of my local friends, and one of them was telling me that Malaysia has the highest obesity in all of Southeast Asia. But he didn't say that as a negative. That was almost a point of pride. Like it was said in a way that was just like, yes, I told you the food's good. We have the highest obesity in the entire region of Southeast Asia. That's how good the food is. Like, all right, if you want to view that as a positive, if I was here for another week, I would definitely be adding to that category for sure. Let's dive in. I used to, when I was working in Medan, I was constantly flying back and forth from China to Indonesia, and I would stop in KL. I'm going to slide in. This is going to just splatter all over me. We've got like 5 more locations after this, and I'm just going to be covered in curry nonsense. I'm going to try and do this in a very clean way. And I would stop, and there used to be a laksa shop at the airport. There's a ton of amazing dishes in Malaysia. Like laksa, I almost didn't even want to show in this video because it's one of the few dishes that has sort of moved overseas. You can find this abroad. But there used to be a shop at the airport in KL that just did an incredible version of this. And that was my tradition, is 4 times a year whenever I'd fly to Indonesia, I would just sit both directions. So 8 times a year I would sit for my 8-hour layover and just eat bowl after bowl of this incredible rich curry soup. But yeah, I'll quickly tell you a little bit about Dennis's, because I had it off camera. So again, several waves of migration from China, starting almost 1,000 years ago when the traders from Fujian came here and became the beginning of a culture called the Peranakan, which we're going to talk about in a different video that we're going to film here tomorrow. That is sort of what eventually led to dishes like this, the curry laksa. That was the culture that kind of intermarried into, the Malay archipelago over the course of hundreds of years. But then, starting in the 19th century, it was really tin mining. Kuala Lumpur is a new city. This didn't exist until the middle of the 1800s, this city. And it was a tin mining village. It was founded because of tin, and that's when you had a lot of Southern Chinese who began to come down, both in terms of investment in trading and also as the workers. And this is a very classic Southern Chinese beef offal soup. The more I talk about it, the longer Dennis has to wait before he can actually eat it. And then, but really quickly to finish, then you have this coffee, which, as I was mentioning, is from the Hainanese, who were the 3rd wave, or 4th or 5th wave that came, and they were the last ones to arrive as the domestic workers in the homes of the wealthy Chinese who'd already made money in the tin mines, and and also working for foreigners where they learned coffee. So this is very Chinese Malaysian, and by that I mean it's very difficult to pin down. It's at least 3 different centuries of migration from 3 different Chinese cultures represented just in the food that's on the table. And Kopitiam, second breakfast of the day. I am stalling for time. It's time for me to eat. Tomorrow is my day. We're filming again tomorrow. Day after tomorrow, I can be in pain. Today, I'm gonna just enjoy it.
In 1371, the Chinese Ming dynasty cut off trade with all foreign countries, implementing a policy of complete isolation to rebuild from the wars against the Mongols. But to the people of the southern coast, trade was their lifeblood. And just before the ban came into effect, thousands from Fujian fled south, settling in what's now Malaysia. Some would build new homes in Kelantan and the northeast, and more made it as far as Borneo, eventually disappearing into the jungle and becoming their own native tribe. It would take almost 200 years before the Chinese trade ban would be lifted, and by the time tens of thousands more would flock here in the 1560s, Malaysia was no longer a backwater, but instead the center of the world. This was thanks to a port called Malacca, established in the early 15th century and quickly becoming the hub of the spice trade and Southeast Asia's gateway to the Silk Road. Chinese migrants would find themselves joining a diverse and thriving society of Malay Muslims, Persians, Arabs, Indonesians, and Indians, all governed by the Portuguese who had seized Malacca in 1511. In this city, food would quickly become a melting pot. Chinese noodles mixing with Malaysian sambal and Indian curry to become the soup we just had for breakfast. And speaking of curry, well, that brings us to our next meal. All right, so I was in Indonesia with Daria's family for a week, and that's how this trip happened. I figured, if I'm going to be in Medan, 45-minute flight, pop over to KL, call Dennis. Luckily enough, he could come down and join me. So I've been here for about 3 days prior to taping, just kind of, trying to remember all my old favorites and going around and making the list of everything that we needed to do for this video. I take no credit for the next one. The next place that we're going right now, half an hour outside the city, in the bordering province to the south. This is smoked duck curry, courtesy of hat tip to Mark Wins, who called this maybe the best curry he'd ever had, and that was good enough for me to go down and try it. And it might be the best curry I've ever had as well. So we have a lot still to come. We're going to do some, old school Malay food. We have to get into the world of Malay-Indian. There's Bak Kut Teh, which, if you know anything about Malaysian Chinese food, is just like, that's going to be a really fun way to end tonight. We're going to try and track down, if possible, some food from Borneo. But, when you think about curry, Malaysia, depending on where you are, it's probably not the first country that comes to mind. Thai curry is a lot more famous around the world, obviously originally Indian, but like here in Southeast Asia, most countries and cultures have some version of it. Indonesia, obviously, but really all of this explosion, curry, what we think of as curry, started here. It started in what's now Malaysia because of the port of Malacca, because of the Johor Sultanate, because of the Patani Sultanate, these old trading outposts that became kind of these hubs of Arabic traders, Indian traders, these groups from all over bringing their spices and bringing their techniques, and curry here in the Malay Peninsula has a history that's just about as long as anywhere in Southeast Asia. This version where we're going right now is just next level. So worth the road trip, and also secretly I'm very thankful to have a little half hour to sit down in the air conditioning and to just let the food digest a little bit. We're 2 meals deep out of 7 planned for today, and it's hitting me that it's been a while since we've done a food crawl like this. Believe it or not, off the air we don't eat this way on a regular basis. So yeah, it's been a few months since we've had a day where we're as ambitious as we are right now, but I am not complaining because the next meal where we're going is just like an all-timer. Welcome to heaven, or at least that's how it looks and smells here off the side of the highway, heading southeast from Kuala Lumpur. I'll make this quick because I want to eat, but basically the story of this restaurant and Malaysian curry in general goes back to the days of Malacca, when an enclave was settled north of the city by migrants from a tribe called the Minangkabau from across the strait in Sumatra. You've heard of the Minangkabau before on this channel, the people responsible for beef rendang and nasi padang. And on the Malay Peninsula, they would prosper, eventually establishing 9 distinct chiefdoms, which would unite into a federation called Negeri Sembilan, or the 9 States. Here, a local specialty would develop, combining Sumatran curry with Indian techniques and the Malay love for coconut milk, creating something called Masak Lemak, a curry base that would sweep across the region. Over time, power would shift from Malacca to Patani, Johor, Penang, and Singapore, and everywhere migrants would bring Masak Lemak. It would find its way to Thailand and back to Indonesia, influencing dishes in those countries as well. And here at this restaurant, the OG version is preserved, Masak Lemak with smoked meat, like in this case, beef and duck.
All right, I'm breaking every rule. Again, I've already made one mistake today. This is number 2. We were supposed to just limit ourselves to the things that we plan to eat so we don't overdo it today, but cempedak goreng is like fried jackfruit, and I've never had this before in this presentation, so cempedak goreng satu. 6 pieces, yeah, sure. Thank you. Your English is much better than my Malay. Thank you so much. Yeah, you know, it's interesting because you think about how significant curry in Malaysia is. It's not as front and center, you know, especially in a place like Kuala Lumpur. There's a lot of Indian curries, you know, in the Indian community, and there's a lot of great Chinese food, but those rich curries that inspired probably something like Masaman in Thailand, for example, those you have to usually get out of the big cities and go into the countryside. These take hours and hours to prepare. There's not a lot of restaurants that do it at this level. So these are the same curry base, the dried beef and the smoked beef and the smoked duck. But they look so different because I guess the amount of fat that comes out from the duck, the beef looks a lot leaner. I'm gonna try both of them because why not? I can't suppress the smile. I'm so excited about this. Dennis, I'll be very quick so that you don't have to just sit here and watch me. All right, so I'm gonna put the beef over. I'm gonna taste the beef just by itself real quick, the beef curry. That's my first bite of the beef curry. I've had the duck one here a couple of days ago. Gosh, I don't even know where to begin. It's so rich. It's like, it's savory. It's not sweet. There's very little sweetness to this at all. There's no real acidity to it either. It's just so like, it's just rich. It's the flavor of richness. It's all those amazing ground herbs. It's a very kind of textural curry. I mean, it's not thin. The duck one, this is like the reason why you travel, the reason why you eat, the reason why you make road trips like this. You can do the same thing and taste this by itself. It's like if you just melted a stick of butter with all the best herbs and spices. It's like, I mean, again, like, there's only so many words I can describe it. It's not a huge flavor. It's not like it's, you know, this, like, sometimes, for example, with Thai curries, there's so much going on in a positive way that you get the brightness and the lemongrass and the acid and, you know, but with this, it's just meat forward, really thick and buttery, and, you know, and this is one of the best things that I've ever eaten. All right, I'm gonna try this. It's stupid how good that is. best curries I've ever had, ever. This is a pantheon meal. Dennis, please come join me.
Ni kedai kami namanya Itik Salai Masthar. Kami yang pertama menu utama kami ialah Itik Salai Masthar, masak lemak. Dan di samping tu ada daging salai, ayam salai, ikan keli salai, rendang itik dan juga seafood. Tu yang kami. Terima kasih. Saya mengalu-alukan pada tamu-tamu di luar sini, di KL apapun yang mana seluruh negeri. Selamat datang ke restoran adikku yang terutama Itik Salai Masthar. Thank you. Okay. Welcome.
In a country with so many cultures and such a complicated history, every single dish tells a story. Even the stuff that looks simple is deceptively fascinating. We still have a long way to go and a lot of ground to cover, but since we have time for one more lunch, well, before we start getting into the complicated stuff, let's stick with old Malacca and the foundation of Malaysian cuisine. When the Portuguese arrived in 1511 and made Malacca the first ever European colony in Southeast Asia, they wrote extensively about one dish, the favorite of the local Malay people. It was relatively simple: grilled fish wrapped in banana leaves and rubbed with something called sambal, a word taken from ancient Sanskrit meaning a mixture of spices. Now here's why I'm telling this story. The captain of the Portuguese fleet, a man named Alfonso de Albuquerque, well, he believed that for colonization to succeed long-term, his men should marry local women, raise good Catholic Malay children, and create a harmonious new society. He sent word back to Portugal, where it was officially announced that anyone who would go to Malacca and settle down with a local woman would be tax-exempt for the rest of their lives. A new community would form in Malacca called the Kristang, mixed Portuguese Malays. And in Kristang households, Ikan Bakar, the favorite local specialty, would take on new dimensions. There was the addition of chili peppers in the sambal, an ingredient brought from the New World, and the use of charcoal for a higher heat. Before long, this would come to be the default across the region. Now, obviously, de Albuquerque's idea would not succeed. The Portuguese kicked out by the Dutch in 1641, and most of the Kristang brought as captives to Jakarta. But Ikan Bakar would survive the years of Dutch occupation. It would survive the English and the struggle for independence, and somehow, if a time traveler from old Malacca showed up today, well, they might not recognize KL, but they would know all about the most popular local lunch. And maybe that's the coolest thing about food in Malaysia. Even in a country starkly modern, the story is not told by old buildings or ancient monuments, but through food. The history of the country buried beneath modern tragedies on the surface, but clearly explained on every single plate.
Hai semua, pada peminat-peminat ikan bakar, kalau datang kat Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, boleh datang ke Ikan Bakar Jalan Bellamy. Jangan lupa datang kedai nombor 2, Ikan Bakar Seri Melaka. Hai!
So if you're ever walking around in this city and you wonder where are all the 8.8 million people that live in Kuala Lumpur, apparently they're here at Ikan Bakar Seri Malacca. This is old school, like red curry rub, banana leaf wrapped fish thrown on the grill. This is a dish that apparently the Portuguese found when they first came to Malacca, so this is hundreds of years old. I don't know. It looks good, it looks popular, I'm gonna try it. The owner could not have been nicer. She wants us to take a photo with her mom later, who is from Malacca, brought this recipe with her. Looking around me, I'm the only one with a fork on my plate, so I'm gonna disregard that. Yeah, this is really good. I mean, fresh fish. This is Malaysia. Is this the first fish we've had today? The last few days of my life are blending together. Dennis, is this the first fish we had today? I think it is. There's so many people here, it's crazy. All right, so as you've seen, like Malaysia is all about the food court, hawker center, whatever you want to call it, and we've refreshed our appetite with a 1-hour drive to the outskirts of what's now suburban Kuala Lumpur. This is a different city. I'm going to check my Google Maps because I don't even remember the name of where we are. It's called Puchong. This was old tin mining country, and you know, searching for a proper Borneo restaurant, Sarawak or Sabah, was not easy. There's not a lot in Kuala Lumpur, and but we found one. It's a place called Warung Sabah Kampungku. It's Taste of Borneo Village Cuisine. That's the name of the restaurant. I called them. They're open. We're going to have our first Borneo meal, and as much as I really shouldn't do it, I'm also tempted. There's a Sarawak noodle shop right next door in the same hawker center. At some point, all the eating is going to catch up to me, but I'm really excited about our dinner, our first dinner.
The story of the Malay Peninsula plays a major role in modern Asian society, from the influence of Malacca to the tin trading settlements of Penang and Kuala Lumpur, to the sultanates of Patani and Johor. But the Malay Peninsula is not the only part of Malaysia. In fact, 60% of the landmass is across the ocean on the island of Borneo, the states of Sabah and Sarawak, and the small archipelago known as Labuan. All the stuff you've heard in the story to this point, well, you can throw it all away. Borneo has a very different history, and for nearly all of it, it was about as far from the Southeast Asian Game of Thrones as one can get. In just the Malaysian slice of the island, there are more than 60 unique ethnic groups, 150 languages and dialects spoken, and tribes to this day living so deep in the world's oldest rainforest that it takes days or even weeks to hike from the nearest road. The entire timeline of Borneo is full of epic and fascinating stories missing from the history books. Wars between the Sulu of the Philippines and the Indonesian Majapahit, centuries of rule by the powerful Sultanate of Brunei, the origin of the name Borneo, and 100 years where a swath of land in Sarawak was governed by the so-called White Rajas, a lineage belonging to an English family named Brooke. But all of that's for another video one day when we get a chance to travel to film there. Today, well, all we want is to find an example of Borneo cuisine, a much bigger challenge than you might imagine, even in the national capital. But at a food court somewhere in the farthest reaches of the city. Mission accomplished.
This is really cool. This is like a complete community center. We were driving in and it's like, it feels like the suburbs, you know, and but everybody's here, you know, watching badminton on the big TV screen up above. Yeah, I'm gonna take a walk. I need to walk a little bit, even after the hour car ride, to get the appetite before the meal.
It's always funny how food works. This crazy addiction that people like Anthony Bourdain, Mark Wiens, me, maybe you, any of us who get that bug and just want to keep exploring and eating, it never goes according to plan. You cannot seek out the best meals, no matter how hard you work. The best thing you can do is try to keep putting yourself in a position where they might find you. Here I am, wandering around some random food court in the middle of nowhere, Malaysia, following a pin I found on Google Maps of something with the name Sabah, the northern part of Borneo, completely unaware that I'm about to sit down for one of the best meals I've had in months, maybe years, maybe ever. Look how blissfully unaware I am of what's about to happen.
Okay, so people who are watching this,
Okay.
when we talk about Malaysian food,
Yes.
usually people just think about Peninsula Malaysia,
Yeah.
not Borneo.
Yes.
If you, and I know this is a lot of pressure, but if you have to explain,
Okay.
what is the difference? What's the food like? Somebody comes to your hometown.
Yes.
What is your hometown, by the way?
Actually, I'm Kuala Penyu. From Kuala Penyu.
Okay.
Okay. So actually, we come Malaysian. We walking, just walking. Around the pandemic, COVID, right?
Yeah.
So we plan to open the Sabah food. The different taste, different culture, and the different like the food. Yeah.
But how would you explain Sabah food? So now you have somebody who's doesn't know what to expect. Not just come to your restaurant, but they go to your hometown.
Yeah.
What's it like? What are people going to find?
What the find? Yes.
Fish?
Fish. Actually, the special one, the tuhau one. Tuhau, boso, losun, and then this one, the bambangan. Okay. And then the bamboo shoot also. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even know there's different stuff on this plate. Okay. Sorry. Let's go back to the beginning. What are these two? So this is the bamboo shoot?
Yeah, this bamboo shoot. This one we call wild mango. Wild mango.
I
Okay.
would love to keep talking to you. I want to start eating. So let's finish that point though.
Okay.
This looks so good.
Okay.
But yes, so if I went to your hometown, it would look like this.
Yes.
I go back, I eat with your family, it's going to look like this.
Yes.
Okay. Can you invite people to come visit your restaurant?
Can I speak Malay?
Please.
Okay. Kepada Sabahan yang ada di Semenanjung yang belum tahu kita punya makanan, Sabahan, terutama sekali Linopot set, ya, tradisi yang saya menjemput kamu datang di sini yang tak pernah datang sini, try kita punya makanan tradisi Sabahan food. Okay?
Okay. I can't believe I'm already hungry again after as much as we've eaten today, but I can't wait to try this.
Okay.
Now, traditionally, I would eat this with my hand or with a spoon.
It's better hand.
I think so too.
Yes.
Okay. Is it okay if I do?
Yes.
All right. Perfect. All right. Thank you so much for your time.
Welcome.
I did not even realize until the chef just pointed this out to me that these are different. So because Dennis and I are going to be sharing, I'm going to scoop some of mine onto his plate and some of his onto mine. Even the fish are different. These are two different kinds of fish. Yeah, Dennis, I'm going to try my best to make sure you get some of everything. I don't know if you're any hungrier than I am right now, but it doesn't matter because this looks incredible. All right, I'll cut you some of my fish. This isn't making great TV right now as I'm just talking through, just killing time while I prepare some food for Dennis. Play the Jeopardy song if you need to. All right. Okay, so I think I've reasonably well divided up the food between the two plates. I'm gonna scoop Dennis some soup in a minute. We have the pisang goreng, the fried bananas. My first ever Borneo meal, my first meal from, I forgot to take your bamboo shoots. My first meal ever from Sabah. And this is amazing because it's like, you see the Taste of Borneo village cuisine, but the name in Bahasa Indonesia, kampung, it's literally, this is village food. This is not restaurant food. And it looks like something you would eat in somebody's home. I'm just gonna start eating. I'm trying to keep this very, there's a lot of fans going on in the food court. And if I try and start turning them off, it's gonna be a million degrees. So I'm just gonna deal with everything blowing everywhere. I'm gonna eat this with my hand because that's the right way to do it. Okay, so let's try this. I'm gonna taste just by itself this, what she called wild ginger. Oh my gosh. It is spicy. There's a hit of citrus. It tastes like ginger, but not in the way that you might imagine. It's not overwhelming. It's got enough heat that I'm glad I got my Malaysian milk tea. You know, when you're in a food court like this, the tea tarik. This feels like I'm giving a presidential press conference right now. Dennis, can you walk around behind me just to show the 5 people standing here feel it's okay. Everybody kind of, they got shy when you started showing them. Okay, now, I don't even know how to describe this. This looks like banana flour. It's very savory. Intensely sour, like intensely sour. I guess it's pickled. The rice is sticky. This is not as easy to eat with my hand as I expected it was gonna be, because you combine it all, it becomes kind of a paste. So forgive me for looking like a little bit of a mess, but yeah. This is unbelievable. This is so good. This is so good.
Yeah.
I just tried the mango.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It's like sour, really acidic, big flavor. Everything's a big flavor. This looked like this was gonna be mild tasting. It's not mild taste at all. It's very big flavor. I'm really loving this. Yeah. Heavy taste of pickle. Like that's the overwhelming flavor, I would say, is fermentation. But really bright, like, yeah, man, this is great. Dennis, you need to start eating. I'm gonna shut up.
I don't even know where to begin with Linopot, other than I have a new food obsession. It's village rice brought here from the Borneo highlands and pounded with yam for a deep flavor and sticky texture. The sides are, I mean, honestly, I don't even know beyond what she just told us. I recognize banana stem, cassava leaves, and a bunch of pickled fruits, but Bornean cuisine is barely Googleable, making this an incredible reminder that even when you eat for a living, there are still surprises that can turn your entire palate upside down.
If I'm going to be completely honest, this is so much better than I expected it to be. I thought it would be interesting, but you see this in pictures and it looks somewhat recognizable. It's wild. It's so different. Yeah. Wow.
In the years of Malacca, and throughout the eras of Portuguese and Dutch colonization, Malaysia was multi-ethnic but without the divisions we now see today. It was common back then for different groups to absorb and assimilate, those marrying local Malays referred to as Peranakan, a Malay word meaning native-born. Pretty much all the food tracing back to that era is the definition of fusion. Peranakan Chinese cuisine, stuff like Laksa, part of a category called Baba Nyonya. But in the ultimate of ironies, even the Baba Nyonyas today live in their own pockets of society. The story of Malaysia's shift from melting pot to something very different begins in the late 18th century, with Europe's maritime powers scrambling to colonize Southeast Asia, and in competition with the Dutch and French, the English under King George III planted their flag on the Malay Peninsula, establishing Georgetown on the island of Penang. Then would come another colony in Singapore, and finally in 1824, a treaty with the Dutch, granting England the rights to Malacca, and the Netherlands full control of the Indonesian archipelago. By the end of the century, the British had consolidated control over all of what's now Malaysia. But with the Crown in the middle of the largest colonial expansion in world history, and facing pushback in Africa and uprisings in India, keeping a full military presence over the Malaysian landmass was impossible. So the British came up with a system of leaving power in the hands of allied chiefs and sultans. But to make sure there would be no rebellions, each ethnic community was kept separate with no communication allowed. The Peranakan Chinese were given domain over the tin trade, granted land near the ports in Penang, Malacca, and Singapore. And Chinese immigrants, Hokkien and Teochew, well, they were assigned to the mines themselves, moving into mining villages like Kuala Lumpur, built as a labor camp in 1857. As the Chinese grew in numbers, the British sought to keep them from becoming a majority, so they brought in millions of Tamil Indians, sent by force as indentured workers. The Tamils were kept on rubber plantations, banned from schools or access to education, and forbidden from interacting with Chinese, or with the Malays, who didn't have it any better. Like the Native Americans across the ocean, the Malays on the peninsula were placed into reservations, granted nominal freedom but with no infrastructure investment, no access to any of the profitable trades, and no options except to survive as subsistence farmers or fishermen on the least valuable land in the territory. At least on Borneo, the native people were more or less left alone, even cultivating their own rubber to sell to the British. But that would all go to hell in the 1880s after someone noticed the local people collecting vats of a black substance, which they'd use to waterproof boats and light lamps. The discovery of oil would bring prospectors, including a trading company known as Shell Transport. To actually work the fields, they'd merge with Royal Dutch Petroleum and become Shell Oil. And that would be that for the relative peace of the other half of Malaysia. And finally, as for the British themselves, well, in their new capital of Kuala Lumpur, they built their own enclaves, reaping the spoils of their subjugation and keeping themselves busy with activities like a drunken Friday evening jog, a whites-only event that would finish at a restaurant they called the Hash House, maybe the most surprising legacy of British Malaya. Anyway, in 1957, Malaysia would gain independence from the British, 6 years later formally establishing the modern kingdom. In an effort to bridge all the massive divides, it was decided that the head of state would rotate every 5 years, chosen from a panel of the leaders of each Malaysian region. But since those rulers were and still are ethnic Malay Muslims, there would be discontent in the other communities. And after 100 years of enforced segregation, the gaps were so baked into the national structure that to this day, the Malays, the Chinese Malays, the Peranakan, and the Malay-Indians all exist in their own versions of Malaysia, separated not by law or even geography, but by a past hard to comprehend to any outsider. The fact that today Malaysia is a rising economic power is incredible, a statement of perseverance and a tribute to the toughness of the people who found a way to make it through to the other side. And since we still haven't checked in on one of those communities, well, I can't think of a better excuse for one of the planet's ultimate comfort foods. On a food trip to KL, if you're doing it right, there's no time to savor a great meal before moving on to the next one, always right around the corner. And since we're now 15 hours into our food crawl without a single Malay-Indian experience, well, that is something we're gonna have to rectify.
Okay, so some of today, believe it or not, is we're kind of making it up as we go along because there are two essential Malay-Indian dishes, Roti Canai, which you're looking at, and Nasi Kandar, which is awesome. It's a rice dish just heaped with a whole bunch of different curries, and that was our plan for now. I do not have the physical capacity to have another gigantic rice dish because we're not quite done eating either for the day. But Roti Canai, this mansion tea stall, is a legendary place here in Kuala Lumpur. This is a dish that takes its roots back to the British Malaysian days when a whole bunch of immigrants came from South India. The name Roti Canai, most likely, nobody can agree on this for sure, but probably comes from the city of Chennai in India. But this is quintessentially Malaysian in the same way that Nasi Lemak is a national dish, that Bak Kut Teh, which you may or may not see in just a few minutes, is kind of a quintessential Chinese Malay dish. This is one of the most important Malay-Indian foods. It's an everyday staple. It's affordable, it's delicious, and this place is pretty iconic for their version. So what it is it's flatbread roti that is topped with a giant spoonful, usually of dal. Made from chickpeas, and then sambal, which obviously by now you understand in Malaysia is absolutely necessary. And here they serve it with two absolutely miraculously barely cooked eggs. So you mix it all together, and I'm gonna do that real quick. It's so good. It's sweet. It's sweeter than you think it's gonna be. When I say dal, you think it's something really savory. There's a sweetness to it. The sambal has just that little hit of heat, the unbelievable richness from the egg, the roti. Malaysia is such a complicated country in terms of food culture. You really have to kind of look at it as somewhere between 3 and an indefinite amount of individual cuisines. And they don't really cross lines from one to the other. But in the Malay-Indian world, this is just a masterpiece. And this version is a masterpiece too. It's too much on my spoon, don't watch me. Everything here somehow, the whole is just so much greater than the sum of the parts. There's so much flavor in this. Like, you look at this and you think it's gonna be roti topped with dal and a little bit of sambal. That's what it sounds like. But it's just this big explosion of flavor and washed down with the tea tarik, the iconic quintessential milk tea, and this might be my favorite version of it. You know, I'll keep talking as I eat. Tea tarik obviously was the inspiration for Thai iced tea, where we live in Bangkok. That owes a debt of gratitude to Malaysian tea tarik, which itself owes a debt of gratitude to Indian masala chai, and on down the line you go. And somehow all roads lead to Malaysia, with so many dishes that we all know and love. I'm gonna wake up. You know, we have to tape another shoot tomorrow. We're doing another video. We only have 2 full days of filming here. I've been here for a few days already. Dennis just arrived yesterday, and we have today, we have tomorrow, and tomorrow we're doing a completely different video. So somehow, I am glad I wore my stretchy pants, but we got some nice restaurants tomorrow. I'm gonna have to somehow fit into my jeans that I brought. That's gonna be something I'm not looking forward to. All right. Dennis, come eat. You're gonna love this. This is, I feel like I say this everywhere we go. This is, in this exact moment, one of the best things we've eaten all day today.
So what is Malaysian food? It's complicated. Maybe figuring out the answer means first understanding what is Malaysia. And that's a question that even here has not quite been determined. This is still a young country, still finding its identity, with a lot of trauma and complicated history to navigate. But it's not starting from zero. There is an anchor for all of the 35 million people, regardless of background. The food. Heritage, pride, and big, bold confidence served in every city, town, and village, from the Thailand border to the coastline of Borneo. A trip to Malaysia might not be easy. It's not always charming or picture perfect, and it can challenge even the most seasoned traveler. But there is a soul here, and it's on every plate. Each dish a showcase of Malaysians' unique ability to take something from somewhere else and make it their own. Then to keep raising the bar with every generation, every single one of the many ethnic communities taking pride in their own heritage by making really good food. Even more than almost any other country, Malaysia can be a very difficult place to penetrate or truly understand, and figuring out where to eat in a country with so many versions of local cuisine is borderline impossible. But when in doubt, there's always one rule when you're on the road. If you don't know where to go, just follow the crowd. And for our last meal, even in the middle of the night, well, that's exactly what we're gonna do. Finishing our evening with a signature dish of the Klang Valley, created right here in the tin mines of Kuala Lumpur. If Nasi Lemak is a Malaysian meal for everyone, if Laksa has become accepted by the masses, well, Bak Kut Teh is very much defiantly different. It's a pork-based soup which, in a country that's almost 65% Muslim, is a rarity. But as a symbol of ethnic identity, Bak Kut Teh is the dish of the Chinese diaspora. And while there is a distinct and separate version served in Singapore, the original roots of Bak Kut Teh trace back to the settlement of Klang, just 30 kilometers from the heart of modern Kuala Lumpur. It started out as a Hokkien dish from China's Fujian province, adapted with traditional medicine and a big pile of pork ribs, meant to give strength and sustenance to the laborers working on the docks and in the mines. The name Bak Kut Teh literally translates in Hokkien to meat, bone, tea, as it was and still remains classically paired with a very strong oolong tea. Now, there are some arguments about its origin and the root of the name, but if I'm going to be honest, at this point, we've gone so deep into history, I kind of just want to eat.
So I was feeling the anger from anybody who's been watching this video that we have not yet shown Bak Kut Teh, which is one of the most, I guess, revered dishes here in Malaysia, Chinese descent, very similar to the dish that you'll find in southern China. It is this. It's just a really aromatic, flavorful broth of pork made with pork ribs, pork offal, all kinds of cuts of pork. And Bak Kut Teh translates to meat, bone, tea. So it's pork bone stock served with tea. In this case, we got ours with their Chinese medicine drink because we've had enough caffeine to be buzzing, and it's very late at night right now. And it's very late at night right now, which means look how busy and popular this place is. This is not even the location I intended to go to. This is the spin-off branch of the main location, which is just a couple of blocks away. But that's full. This is full. It's an iconic Kuala Lumpur institution. I'm gonna pretend like this is the first time I've ever been here, but it's not. I really, really enjoy this version of it. This is a local legend. They make what they call a dry Bak Kut Teh, which is pork. I got a leaner cut for ours just because, I don't know, I panicked. There's a lot of customers, so I just ordered quickly. We have mustard greens, some tofu skin, some youtiao, a little soup to soak that in, and they do a scallion rice, which you're gonna spoon it on top of, have it as a soup, some garlic, some chili, and yeah, Bak Kut Teh. This is open until 2:30 in the morning, and it's gonna be busy until 2:30 in the morning, that's for sure. Let me try it. Yeah, Kuala Lumpur is not, this isn't Hanoi where you're blown away when you get here by the charming old city. You know, it's not Bangkok where everyone's smiling and, you know, you have these beautiful temples and, you know, vibrant street food culture. You know, it's not the easiest place to really get a feel for, and it doesn't have the best reputation, and there's a reason for that. And I'm not saying that I would move to Kuala Lumpur or that I think it's the best city in Asia. But I don't know, from a food standpoint, this Malaysia really stands up to anywhere else. It's been underappreciated for so long. You know, it's like, it's forgotten when we talk about the great food destinations in this continent, and it really shouldn't be. Again, you know, I was saying it this morning, I'm gonna just talk for a couple more minutes and then just shut up and eat. I was saying this morning, well, that's fire. That's so, I haven't had that here actually, the mustard greens, that's amazing. You know, that is, this morning I was saying that, like, in, you know, the word segregation is the wrong word to use, but people are pretty separate here. But again, you look at these countries like Thailand where we live, where everyone sort of forcibly 100 years ago assimilated. You know, the government made policies where people had to drop their last names and take a Thai name, or to learn Thai in school only. And now you go to Thailand and you see this amazing melting pot. But that doesn't necessarily mean it was a positive for the people at that time. It was a very controversial chapter in Thai history, and I'm bringing up Thailand because we live there, but a lot of countries around the world have gone through periods like that. Malaysia didn't. Malaysia's, first of all, as a country, is so new. But what I mean is, I don't necessarily look at it as a negative that people still have their own separate ethnic identities, that there's still something like this, which is very much Chinese, you know, not intended or part of the culinary palette for, you know, a lot of people who don't come from that background. And a lot of the food that we have today kind of tells that same story in different cultures. But that's not a negative, right? And whatever it is, it's taken on these amazing Malaysian characteristics with the ingredients here and the culture and yeah, it's a special place. It's an amazing country to eat. And I think it's really cool that, like, Chinese Malays, Indian Malays, Malay people have all maintained that much of their own traditions, their own food, you know. Yeah, I don't know. There's some anthropologists would do better than me deep diving into that idea. It's just what comes to mind right now when we're 7 meals deep and I'm about 3 kilos heavier than I was this morning. By the way, Dennis, I'm going to apologize to you for how I'm going to smell tomorrow. You know, combined with the rain and the fact that we've had 7 meal stops, we didn't film any B-roll today. You know, those walking around shots. We're looking at the city. So we're going to have to do that tomorrow in a little bit of free time that we have worked in, which means I'm going to have to throw these clothes back on so it fits naturally. You're going to have to smell me after everything that we've done today, putting these clothes back on. You know, we were in the smoking room at the smokehouse room at the curry restaurant. You know, the fish place, outside in the rain, the intense heat. Here, we're like 16 hours into this shoot today, and I'm throwing these right back on tomorrow. Which means if you've watched this video, some of the shots you saw earlier have not been filmed yet, most likely. Anyway, yeah, let's eat. Dennis, you need to try this while it's still hot. I can't pick a favorite. Everything we had. So many amazing meals. That Sabah meal from Borneo. I had no expectations going in. That was incredible. The curry feels like 100 years ago, but the Nasi Lemak this morning, you know. Dennis, pull up a chair and a bowl and dive in. This is so good.
Subscribe to the channel for more from OTR. Thank you so much to everyone who supports us on Patreon. It really helps to keep us going. Find links below to our Patreon and social media, and we'll see you soon.